West and Eastern Cape. And we've been able, that is why it was possible for us to do justice and almost all the political principles except the challenge of one metro. And the plan now, before we can get to the ministers, deputy ministers responding national, it's to allow the three of them, Northwest, Eastern Cape, KZN, mainly focusing on three issues. The first one, it's about the current situation since the last time we had an interaction. The second issue that we can cover, it's this thorny issue of the application, so that once we go to the national department, then that one is clarified once and for all. Then the last issue, it's probably over and above what we have prepared as a detailed presentation, because it's more of almost all the issues as reflected by Honorable Hlengwa. They are related, and you can take the opportunity to clarify some of the questions, because not all questions that are being asked by colleagues must be answered by national, but there are some questions that are specific that you can clarify before we can get to national. And once we are done with that part, then we'll go back to the questions asked to relevant departments so that they can be able to respond to them. Starting with MEC Northwest, as we are representing the Premier, it's gone. With your team, looking at the three issues, but even in your case, it was yesterday when we were in Northwest, and there are one or two issues that have been raised by members touching what is happening in Northwest in relation to other provinces and national. And of course, the specifics in terms of the issue of the applications and what has been presented up to this far. But there's nothing that is stopping you, MEC, if you feel that out of what you might want to raise, there are one or two issues that you think part of the team that is supporting you, they can add. MEC. Let me indicate that the Premier indicated that he got the time that we're going to get some engagement, so there was a formal apology from the Premier Mape. MEC?
Okay, no, thanks very much, Honorable Chair and Co-Chair, Chairperson, and maybe I must also appreciate this moment and greet my colleague MECs who are here, the Premier from KZ and the Honorable Deputy Ministers and Ministers who have been here also, and the Honorable Members of the Ad Hoc Committee, and all protocol observed. I think without any waste of time then, and guided by the points that we have indicated, Honorable Chair, we'll just talk to what is in the presentation without necessarily going through the presentation. In terms of the current situation, we must indicate that we had about 1,000 plus people who were affected in Dilban. And for today, we must indicate that all of them have gone back to their homes now that water have subsided in their houses. We have few whom are accommodated in their relatives due to the fact that their houses are still submerged in water, and they are now being attended to and catered for in terms of the support in the areas where, in their relatives where they have been accommodated. I think there's got to be an understanding that with us rural people, we prefer being with our families and relatives than to be accommodated anywhere else. And that's the situation we have in Deelpan. And when coming to the issue of the support, all the department continues to provide support, especially your social development and your agriculture. That does give continuous support in terms of food parcels and so forth. Agriculture does have what we call a center that is called CORA, where they do practicals in terms of farming and so forth. So whatever they get there, they prioritize Deelpan people in terms of supply. But we must also indicate that all other departments also have managed to, for an example, the Department of Health managed to erect a park home that will be operational very soon. They are currently electrifying it. The department that has been having difficulties, that one of public works that has got to do with roads, because water was still there in the roads. I think honorable members might have seen the situation. To a large extent, without necessarily going to each and every department, all the departments are trying to do their best in assisting the people in Deelpan. And when we come to the issue of funding, the Department of Human Settlement made an application requesting an approval to utilize some funds within our housing development grant, which an approval was then granted. So where we are, Human Settlement was granted to utilize out of their housing development grant 54 million rand, which 54 million rand is supposed to be used for TRUs. Where we are, and I think the presentation that was made was correct to say we're supposed to have been done a lot of work in terms of that approval, but we've been taken back and forth by the traditional leaders in terms of land availability. And we then, I think 2 weeks back, got a letter that confirmed that they have allocated a piece of land which the committee saw yesterday. Yeah, but still they are saying for us to start, they would want to have a meeting first as the traditional leaders, because the assessment is made there by DDEC in terms of environmental impact assessment tells us that we can't keep that land cannot be confirmed for residential area. If we talk temporary, yes, but it cannot be confirmed that those people can settle there permanently. So that's the discussions that we have with the traditional leaders also, which also will be taken over then obviously to the communities, because there is that lack of understanding. People think that if we erect those temporary, would now not consider giving them houses and so forth and so forth. And the challenge is the one that I think honorable member is indicating, that in terms of rural areas, the piece of land that you got to be allocated is not equal to the one that we allocate as government. And then becomes a serious challenge in terms of rural people to say, but you want to give me these square meters when in terms of my piece of land that I've always had, I've got this. Now, unless we are assisted or advised otherwise, that there's law that can assist us to then give those people what they expect from us, other than to what government have approved. I think then we'll be able to address those. So where we are, and I think we must also clarify the contradiction that honorable member indicated to have been an embarrassment in terms of what the Premier said and what the Executive Mayor said. The Department of COCTA is the one coordinating disaster management. And that's why our presentation have got all what other departments have been doing and are also looking at in terms of allocations. But there's a situation that we could not help, that the district mayor thought that in his view, there's something that can be done in Deelpan without necessarily relocating those people. And we have always been insisting on the report, an engineering report that he indicates, and we have up to this far not received any of that report. So we could not, and that's why Premier could not even commit himself in terms of that report, which the executive mayor continued to indicate to. I think honorable members would remember that even at that meeting, the district mayor said the MM is here, the MM must find a way to submit that report. We tried the MM, I think, with the acting HOD yesterday. The MM is not having that report. We confirmed even before we start this meeting today, the MM does not have. Now, we could not commit on something that we do not have. We have a report done by DDECT and by HDA to say we cannot have those people in that area permanently, and therefore we should start discussing relocation and engaging those people in terms of relocation, which is the process that government will obviously start engaging with the community of Deelpan in terms of that relocation. So where we are, we indeed had thought that by this time we would have erected all, if not at least half of the TRUs. But because of the discussions requested by the tradition, because we can't get into their area without their permission, we are still to hear, and they promised us that by Monday they would meet and they will give us a report on Tuesday on what have been the discussions. Because what I think they are fearing is that once the department start erecting some TRUs there, and there's no clarity in terms of the community, whether it's something permanent or what, they are fearing that it would be as if they are not representing the communities correctly. So we said they must then meet tomorrow, so that beyond their meeting tomorrow, we must then have a joint meeting with them, so that we also find a way of going to the community together. Now, without any waste of time, Honorable Chair, I want to go to the slide that talks to the funding HOD. That funding has not been confirmed because, as the Premier has indicated, we had to then agree that all the departments would have to go back, reprioritize, and that was beyond our meeting with the deputy ministers who visited the province. That there was an insistence that the province would have to reprioritize and find a way to accommodate this disaster. So where we are, we have a situation where we can confirm only the Department of Agriculture to have made an application of about 31 million rand for compensation of farmers, and they are still awaiting response. We also can confirm that the approval that we spoke about in terms of human settlement, which we said is coming from our housing development grant as the province. We also can indicate that the Department of Economic Development is looking at availing about 2 million rand for the equipment for those tuck shops and other small SMMEs who are affected. Up to this far, that adjustment has not been made. They are still looking at doing it. I think Akamudri Mulema has indicated what they have spent from their coffers. That is 7.9 million, but it also includes some kind of assistance that they got from other stakeholders. Social development also have spent out of their coffers about 649 million. And Mahikeng local municipality is requesting about 1.8 million, which we will have to look at what we have, because they want it for human settlement also, they want it for housing, which also we would have to look at. What I think the committee was not happy about in terms of the presentations yesterday was that our presentation has accommodated other areas which in their view they wanted to focus on Deelpan as a declared disaster area. And that's what we then have agreed and accepted that that's what we have to correct, because it had then included how Tswaying is going to be assisted in terms of internal roads, your potholes, patching and so forth, and other areas in terms of the supply and the support, which we have requested that the technical team must start then doing that. So all the departments will then have to give specifics in terms of Deelpan and Deelpan only, and not deal with other areas that we had accommodated, Honorable Chair, in the report. So I think where we are, I had noted the question that Honorable Member has indicated in terms of the Premier versus the district mayor, but also the one that said we had indicated that work would have been done by May in terms of TRUs, and why is it not yet done by today, which I think will formally also indicate the reasons why we have not yet erected the TRUs as per the indication in the presentation. I think if there's any other, Honorable Chair will then be guided by your good self. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Honorable MEC Mika. And we indicated that if there are some issues that are outstanding, the Secretariat will send them so that you can respond in details. MEC Cocta, Honorable Nita, Eastern Cape.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair, Co-Chairpersons. Protocol is observed. Without wasting time, Honorable Chair, maybe let me start on the slide, summarize on the slide that deals with humanitarian relief, which has been provided by SASSA, Department of Social Development, including Lotto Commission and Vusisizwe Foundation, and Gift of the Givers. The figures are there, and then followed by the slides that talks about the total number of houses that have been partially and totally destroyed. I want to go where there is, in terms of current, as the chair has indicated. On the Department of Education interventions in the province, Amatole West, about 26 schools, Amatole East, 26 schools were affected, and the contractor is to be appointed, awaiting appointment letter. And in some schools in Case Kamahuk, it has already been awarded, and the site has been handed over to deal with the issues of 26 schools in that area. And in Alfred Nzo, 2 schools that were affected there, that is Alfred Nzo West. The contract has been awarded already there. And in Krisani, 15 schools, Krisani East, they have been awarded. I mean, it is at the bid education stage, that one. And OR Tambo, 19 schools, Coastal, OR Tambo Coastal. The contractor has been awarded already in Lusikisiki. In Flagstaff, at the bid education stage. Libode and Ngaleni, it has been awarded. Those are the interventions by Department of Education as it relates to school education infrastructure. Department of Health infrastructure. In Alfred Nzo, about 3 clinics they are affected, and 1 hospital, and again another hospital and clinic in Kolokweni. And the contractor has been appointed there, and the value is indicated. In the 1 hospital in Alwal North Hospital Theatre, the roof has been already replaced, the Honorable Chair, and work has been completed. The value has been indicated. And Then in Kogolweni, the contractor appointed and contract signed. So those are the intervention, Chair, without going one by one. But I just want to indicate where the appointments have been made and work completed. There is a work in progress there relating to health. Again, same thing with Cluster 2, Amajiki and Tiki Clinic. Work has been completed on both clinics, and the value has been indicated. In other clinics in Cluster 3, in Krisani, site handover has been done. As it relates to the Department of Human Settlements intervention, with a target of about 1,000, temporary shelters to be erected between Alfred Nzo and OR Tambo. The total is 1,000. To date, a contractor has been appointed, and to date, about 248 units have been completed in Alfred Nzo, and 153 units have been completed in OR Tambo. And the expectation is that the 1,000 units must have been completed by the 30th of September. That is the 1,000 units having completed the 500 already. It's an issue that we intend to follow up, because between now and September, if we completed 500 already, there is an issue that we must, we're going to be attending to that, Honorable Chair. And the National Department has transferred about 105 million from the Human Settlement Disaster Grant to the province to assist in the response. And the National Department of Human Settlement has approved application, for instance, for Alfred Nzo, it was mentioned here, in December for the disaster to the value of 16 million. And so the province is currently planning to eradicate about 5,450 mud structures for disasters that have occurred between December and April 2022. On intervention by the Department of Water and Sanitation, Honorable Chair, which we must express, Honorable DM Mahlobo, like to be emphatic on this issue. The support we're getting, from the Department of Human Settlement, I think there have been like permanent residents in trying to help us with these interventions, and they have provided about 11 tankers which were hired through the agency Amatola Water Rapid Response Business Plan, and those were dispersed to OR Tambo in the local municipalities, 3 tankers in Nyandeni, 2 Mhlonhlo, Port St. John's, 3 KSD, 3, which totals 11. And also the department has allowed the affected service other water authorities to reprioritize their WISC grant to repair damaged infrastructure. That has happened, Honorable Chair. And with the Department of Transport, Honorable Chair, we have put in the slides the total of roads and bridges affected in each of the districts. The slides do provide that detail. And we have reprioritized about 158 million as a contribution, and the actual commencement as of the actual work having done the reprioritization was targeted to be the first week of June. And with Dr. Da, which is Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform, they are in OR Tambo and Alfred Nzo and Joe Kabi. The areas affected, including grain, vegetable, livestock, infrastructure, affected there. And the value of what we need in order to address the impact there is about 69 million. And we have submitted a funding request to the national awaiting response, that is the National Department of Agriculture. And short to long-term interventions by the debt, that is Department of Economic Development in the province. Let me skip that slide, Honorable Chair, in the interest of time. We have done reprioritization for immediate projects. All municipalities have done in the context of the national state of disaster to do reprioritization. That has been done in one municipality is awaiting approval from the National Department of Cooperative. And there's been progress in terms of contractor being appointed after reprioritization. For instance, in Mhlonhlo for regraveling is already underway to fix some of the damaged infrastructure. And we have submitted to the National Disaster Management Center an application on behalf of sector departments and municipalities to access funding to the value of 1.8 billion. We are awaiting response as a province. We're submitting this request against what is available in the NDMC of 371 million for the municipal disaster relief grant and the provincial disaster relief grant of 145 million. So we are submitting more than 1.8 billion as a support against what they have. There has not been progress yet on what we submitted when we interacted with the committee. That DBSA did provide 49 million to be divided between the affected districts to provide water tankers, solar boreholes, and bridges, for instance, in Tabankul. There has not been movements of funds so that we can proceed with the implementation. That is movement of funds from DBSA to the province. Honorable Chair, this is the latest update in brief, which I'll be guided by honorable members in terms of further questions if I'm leaving anything. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, MEC Ngwada. I can indicate, colleagues, that with KZN, you'll remember that even as a committee, because of the magnitude of the impact of the disaster, in Northwest to spend 1 day, Eastern Cape it was 3 days, but we decided to camp for 5 days in KZN. So we've got the Premier, Zigalala, MEC Finance, MEC Cooperative, MEC Human Settlement. So, Premier, it's up to you with your delegation how you want to share in dealing with the issues that I've raised.
No, thanks, Honorable Chair, Honorable Co-Chairs, and all colleagues. We request that we allow DDG Mkuchini to summarize our report. It is a detailed report. DDG Mkuchini will summarize it on behalf of the province as the head of Disaster Management Center under Cooperative. MEC for Cooperative also is here, MEC Hlomuga. Thank you.
DDG, a roving mic.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the members, to the chair, to the ministers, deputy ministers, to the members of the ad hoc committee. My name is Barbara Mkuchini. I'm the DDG for Development and Planning within KZN Cooperative, and I'm going to be presenting our consolidated report. I'm saying consolidated because it provides a picture in terms of all the sectors within the province as well as the municipalities that were affected. I also need to indicate that as a province, upon the onset of the disaster, we were requested to rearrange our institutional arrangements to ensure we respond to the disaster. We did present to the ad hoc committee our institutional arrangements, and in those arrangements, we did indicate we've got the interministerial committee that sits on a daily basis at the time to deal with disasters. But that interministerial committee now meets once a week because we've now sort of smoothened the processes. But if there is a need, the interministerial committee has to be called and it meets. I'm not going to go through the issues that were already presented by the presenters in the morning, but I need to just indicate in terms of the flow of our presentation so that the members, when they read the presentation on their own, they can understand where we are going. If we can just go back to the slide that has got the purpose, I'll indicate the report is structured in terms of the work streams that we have. The work streams are listed in there, which is the security and emergency, risk and early warning, the humanitarian infrastructure interventions, economic recovery, communication, and the finance work stream. I know the interest of the members is mainly on the infrastructure, rehabilitation, as well as the finance work stream. So I'll put more emphasis on those so that we just are on the same page in terms of the recovery process. The next slide is also an indication of where we are in terms of the recovery process. The slides that were presented by my colleague in the morning from DCOC indicated that we've got 3 phases, and at the moment, we're mainly dealing with phase 1 and 2, which relates to the immediate humanitarian support, as well as the focus on stabilization and recovery and the housing of those that were displaced. That process is underway, it's running, and we are also putting emphasis on the fact that we are not retaining people in areas that are not habitable. Assessments are done by the Department of Human Settlements to ensure that when we do the rebuilding, we move people to suitable houses. And that is the reason why there's been slow progress in terms of the TRUs because of that challenge of land. In terms of 3, which is the focus on rehabilitation and reconstruction, the building back better. We are not yet there because no funding has been released for item 3, which is the main funding application that we submitted to the National Disaster Management Center for onward transmission to National Treasury. National Treasury did indicate that this part, they will deal with it during adjustment, and they also indicated by August, they will then start that process of looking at the main application. This is the totality of the 17 billion that we applied for. If we move again, I'm putting emphasis on that slide in terms of the reporting mechanisms that we've put in place through the structures that we reported to the ad hoc committee previously. So we are aware that the presidency require a report every Friday. So in the next slide, we are indicating how we are meeting those obligations in terms of the reports that are required. So I'll not go through in detail, but this is just to give a comfort to the members that we are trying our best to ensure that information is cascaded or reaches the relevant parties as required. So we get our work streams meeting every Monday, chaired by the HOD for Cooperative, every Monday at 3 p.m., every Tuesday at 7 p.m., the MEC for Cooperative chairs the IMC, and we present a full report or consolidated report, including special items that the members of the executive may want to get more detail on. And then every Thursday, we're being invited to the National Joint Coordination Committee on Floods by DCOC, and we were then presenting reports. And every Friday, the report then gets consolidated for the presidency. So we should then all have the same report by the end of each week, indicating where we are with the reconstruction and the humanitarian relief programs that we have. In the next slide, we just also need to indicate that the work streams that we have are chaired by very senior people in the province, starting with DDGs, and where we do not have DDGs is the chief directors. So we are giving importance to this process of ensuring the communities receive the relief that is expected, and we also consolidate our information and we talk with one voice. These are our coordinating structures where all departments meet, coordinated by the HOD for COCTA. In that meeting, we also have the provincial commissioner with all the generals from each district meeting to then deliberate on issues. We get these reports tabled by the workstream leaders. And just as an example, the workstream on finance is led by the DDG in provincial treasury. The workstream on economic recovery is led by a DDG in economic development. So this should give comfort to the issue of coordination, that we are trying to coordinate ourselves better. And it's also a learning process moving forward. I'm sure we should be able to deal with future disasters in a better manner. The next slide, the presentation by DWS did allude to war rooms. We do have war rooms in place over and above the work streams. The war room for water is chaired by Angela. She's here, and those meetings happen daily at 8 a.m. On virtually. Daily at 8 a.m. chaired by DWS with the participation of municipalities, and the eThekwini one is the main one since it's the epicenter, and we meet with eThekwini at 8 every day to just get a sense of where we are in terms of water issues. We've got a war room on infrastructure led by Sanral with the participation of our provincial DOT as well as COCTA and relevant parties. Human settlements is led by DDG Bengu with the participation of all the institutions of housing, and that's where the coordination happens, and they meet every Monday at 7:30 to deal with issues of housing and also to ensure bulk services are provided on time, and we discuss those issues at that platform. The incident impact is indicated in this slide. It's just an overall indication of where we are and the damages that we are facing and the impact in terms of what we felt as a province. I do need to indicate that we've got 462 total bodies that were recovered. Out of those 462, we've got 10 that are badly decomposed, and it has been difficult to then determine whether they are really flood-related or not, but they were brought at the time of the floods by the police to the mortuaries. There is a task team that has been established to now go deep into each of these issues to now finalize our numbers. So don't be surprised, members, if that 462 changes because of those issues that I have raised. Moving on, we are just giving a summary in terms of the incidents. We did present this slide before. I'm not going to go through it again, but to also just indicate, it summarizes its raw data that we get from municipalities, and then it's subject to further cleaning by human settlements when they go and verify per household if the damages that have been reported are real and the numbers within that community. So at times you'd find that when reports come in terms of the rawness, they would say it's one household. But when they go to verify as human settlements and they get on site, they find that within that area, maybe there is a second household that requires support and they cannot just leave. So auditors have picked that up, and Department of Human Settlements has had to provide the clarification, because they cannot just leave an individual when they've not noticed that there is a need. It may have been an oversight from those that assessed initially or reported through the ward councillors, so that verification process is meant to then ensure everyone is covered. So those figures will keep changing. Workstream 1, I will not go through it except to indicate that yes, we are receiving the SANDF support, but we are still to then get the costing as requested by the members in terms of how much it has cost. We do not have the figures at the moment, but this is the work that they do as the SANDF. In the next slide, it's indicating that they work in terms of assisting with the roads, with the bridges, with water issues, as well as with distribution of relief and the rescue services. I will not go through again in terms of this slide. And the next slide is also indicating that we did receive support from other provinces, and that has since demobilized because of the fact that we are now almost 2 months after the disaster. So we are now utilizing our own internal capacity as a province to continue with the search and rescue missions. But these are the difficult conditions that they were working under. And as a word of appreciation, the Premier did write letters to the provinces appreciating the support. And we also intend providing another token, maybe in the form of a medal moving forward. It's something that is still at a conceptual phase. The next slide is indicating the health sector. I'll not go through it, except to indicate that there are 25 unidentified bodies with DNA not collected, and the results are still also outstanding. There is a challenge in matching these 25 with the 84 missing, and the task team that I mentioned earlier is going to be dealing with this issue in detail, and we should be receiving a report for tabling at the provincial executive in the near future. But we do need to indicate that the health sector is visiting the shelters and providing support as required, and we get a breakdown at our weekly meetings in terms of the shelters that have been visited and the support that has been provided. We do need to indicate that there are challenges in terms of COVID regulations in the shelters, the overcrowdedness, and we did report this to the ad hoc committee previously. But we are trying by all means with the assistance of DSD national and provincially to ensure services are provided at the shelters, and we also have donor funding that is coming through, including what you can see on the picture there, the UNICEF donation where they installed static tanks for the delivery of water in some of the facilities. We've also embarked on a cleanup campaign through the CWP program of DCOC, and also with the assistance of municipalities, and this is still ongoing to clean up the areas. The next slide also shows the beach cleanup campaigns that were undertaken, including the support that we received from the National Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment in the next slide, and also the MEC for Etia, where they did clean up the beaches and removed a lot of rubble, also with the assistance of the SANDF. Workstream 2 is on early warning systems. There was an issue around what we are then doing moving forward to address the challenges that we face. But we also need to indicate that when we receive the alerts, we always then alert our disaster management centers to be able to respond to the issues. And we are there indicating the early warning systems that are in place when we do receive those alerts. Just to take you back a bit in terms of the history of flooding, especially in Durban, we're just indicating for Durban for now to show that as much as we are saying there is climate change, but we also need to show that in 1856, around April, we had serious floods in Durban. 1905, there is also a history of serious floods in May. 1917, July, 1917 again in October, and so forth. And moving on to 2010 onwards, we are also indicating the floods that we faced and the quantum of rain that we received in that period, which shows that this is a recurring phenomenon that we need to now plan for and ensure we don't face similar catastrophes moving forward. The next slide is indicating the Durban floods, comparing between April and May, and the quantity of rain that we received, especially in different areas. For Palito, as an example, we had 253 in April and 77 in May. These rains came at a time when the ground was still saturated, and therefore it worsened the situation on the ground for these areas. If you look at Umkomas as an example, in Scottsboro, 317 in April, and in May, 185. So we just are giving this comparison as part of the work that we've commenced with the city, as well as with our various partners, including DWS, to ensure that with the floods moving forward, we've got clear plans in place. We also give an example of Lady Smith, which also floods whenever there are heavy rains. Is because of where it's situated at the confluence of two rivers, the Klip River and the Sand River. And the town is about 7 kilometers downstream, but it gets flooded when we get these rains. Moving on again to the South Basin, we've got that analysis for the South Basin in Durban, and the Premier has directed that we form a special task team that will look at the Durban South Basin, since this is an area that was affected. But for the South Basin, there is a different explanation, as the effects came well after the night of the floods. It was after the floodgates were opened and there was too much water then that went through and affected the South Basin. We've got the intervention through the executive, where we are now coordinating a task team that is going to sit and relook at the issues around the South Basin together with the private sector, as they were mostly impacted by the floods. The task team will also look at the future and what needs to be done to prevent the occurrence that we had, as you can see. We've also done a flood analysis in terms of the whole of eThekwini, all the wards and indication of the flood risk, exposure and vulnerability. And we are also planning to have this in all the hotspots within the province. And it's work that we've commenced doing, including also working closely with eThekwini to identify their hotspots. And we've highlighted those in terms of the floodplains and mapping the areas. The next slide is just an indication of what we also came up with just before the 21st May floods that we faced, and we had already mapped the areas that were prone and were ready to then respond to the issues. The next slide is an aerial photograph showing the before and after of the floods, especially in a settlement in Umlazi mega city above the mall. And in there we are showing that just before the floods, the settlement was all green and everything was fine. But then after the floods, you can see the rivers changed courses. New areas had new river courses that were not there before. And with the study and with the assistance of the academia, we are now then going to be coming up with new plans moving forward. Again, the next slide, we're indicating the area in Molweni village, and we're also indicating how the flood ravaged the area and damaged some of the households. Moving on to the work stream on humanitarian relief, we are just indicating there are non-negotiables for shelters. And with those non-negotiables, we've said we cannot allow the people in shelter not to have food, not to have water, electricity, issue of security, ablution facilities, blankets, mattresses, child protection services, as well as the psychosocial support. These are the non-negotiables that were directed by the provincial executive to ensure they are in place in each shelter, and we are working closely with the Department of Social Development as well as SAPS and SANDF to assist the communities in the shelters, including the support that we are getting from the NGOs. The SAPS is patrolling about 20 shelters, as well as the SANDF in some cases. We have the list of the shelters in the slide, and we are indicating the breakdown. Members will notice that there are a lot of children in these shelters. We are giving a breakdown in terms of male, female, the children, the disabled, and you notice that for eThekwini, we've got about 1,763 children housed in the shelters. And it's something that we are looking at closely to ensure that we provide security, and we also have other interventions, and social development has a plan. And in the next slide, we're also indicating the plan from the social development, where they are providing childcare and protection services. They are also providing care and support to people with disabilities, care and support to older persons, trauma counseling, as well as psychosocial support to families that are comprised of those that require repatriation and those that are still in shelters and are traumatized. So the work is ongoing, but in the next slide, we're also indicating the needs that have come up in terms of the shelters. For children, it's mainly school uniform and psychosocial support. And for family members, they're indicating their trauma in terms of shelter, the need for shelter, also the need for groceries, clothing, and so forth. And these are the things then that we then request our social partners to provide. So when we get requests from social partners, we do indicate to them that these are the needs at the shelters, and also for those that are displaced. Of course, there are challenges that we still face in shelters and these are highlighted in the next slide, and those include the need for families to still find their loved ones, the 84 that are missing, also the delays in terms of DNA, the length stay in shelters, the issue around the speedy delivery of housing, and also some concerns at times in terms of the cleaning of toilets and filling of water tanks at the facilities. We are working closely with the municipalities to ensure these issues are addressed within the funding constraints that we have. The next slide is indicating the aid that we've received directly as government. The Honorable Premier did indicate that there are donations that are coming through direct to the affected communities, but we can only account for those that came to the government. And these are listed, and as we receive these, we will be documenting to ensure that our database is updated. Moving on, we're also indicating the support from the United Nations, and it's also broken down, and they've also indicated they will be deploying some human resources to the Provincial Disaster Center, and we are awaiting the finalization of that. DBSA has also donated, have written a commitment to donate support to the value of 78 million, and that support will be in the form of water tankers, 14 of them, water infrastructure in the form of solar boreholes and treatment package plants, 15 of that, and replacement housing, 200, and this is permanent housing. They've categorically stated they would not want to do temporary housing, and they want permanent housing. So they are they are engaging with Department of Human Settlements to ensure that this is then rolled out as soon as possible, and identifying the clusters for the permanent housing as they have indicated. We are still awaiting the allocation to the municipalities. Moving on to the funerals, I'm aware we have challenges in terms of funerals, and we did receive support from Motsepe Foundation and AFBOB, and this is also ongoing. We had challenges in identifying, in ensuring the communities that were affected received the support, and pamphlets were prepared through our communication to communicate to those that lost their loved ones, to ensure they get the message that we will be supporting the affected during the disaster. In terms of the updates for the reimbursements, we've been informed that work is progressing well, although there were challenges in terms of the rate of reimbursements. We also indicating in there that Icebo Letu has agreed to reimburse some of the families that had sort of been assisted through the funeral parlors. They've done a reimbursement to Motsepe Foundation to an amount of 306, and they are also in the process of reimbursing families to an amount of 159,000. Workstream 3 is on food, nutrition, and agriculture, and in there we are also indicating that Department of Agriculture has a recovery plan in partnership with National Department of Land Reform, and that plan is already underway. They've done the assessments, and they've also reprioritized within the confines of their budgets. I will not go through in detail. I'll move on to Workstream 5, which is dealing with infrastructure, human settlements, transport, education, water, and sanitation, and electricity. In there, we are also then outlining the human settlements support, and the HOD did present earlier on in the morning. There is a requirement of 2.1 billion, and out of that, they have reprioritized 515 million, and there's a shortfall of 1.6 billion, which has now been put forward to National. They have the short-term, medium-term, and long-term interventions planned, and in the short term, it's mainly the TRUs and the material supply that they have indicated, and within the short term, they're also identifying land that can then be utilized for human settlements. And with the medium term, it's identifying land for permanent housing, and also the long term, the identification of land parcels for acquisition, which is a process that is also already commenced. The human settlements land identification process is also clearly outlined, and also to indicate to the members that we are identifying land that is suitable, and there is also an assessment that is done prior, which includes geophysical constraints assessments, your slope, your 1 in 100 flood line, to also avoid areas that have got ecological issues, protected areas, and areas that have geohazards. So that process is ongoing, and again, there are land parcels that have been identified, and work is underway to ensure the land is then available for human settlements. In terms of the construction of TRUs, at the point of submitting this report, we're sitting at 385 TRUs that were completed, but as we speak, we've been advised that we are now sitting at 425. So this is, the number increases as new information comes, and the service providers are working flat out, even on weekends, to ensure that the houses are delivered. We do have challenges in the urban areas in terms of land, and it's quicker then to provide the housing in the rural areas because there are no constraints in terms of land. But most of our challenges are in the urban areas, and that's where we have people in the shelters, and we then need to find a quicker intervention. Expenditure to date in terms of human settlements is also reported to Treasury, and real-time audits are then undertaken to ensure we are not found wanting moving forward. The next slide is, as of 29th June, we're indicating the breakdown in terms of human settlements, the houses that were at platform, at slab level, at completion stage, to also indicate that by Monday, we may have an additional 200 or 300 houses that would have been completed, and that process is ongoing. The next slide, we're indicating the breakdown in terms of short-term interventions. We have that breakdown per target municipality. Starting with KwaDukuza, we are indicating the shelter, we are indicating the housing, the land that has been identified, so that we are we are capable of removing the people that are in the shelters. So that work is underway, and we've got that information per shelter and in all the municipalities. And I think in the morning we did receive information also in detail. At eThekwini, we are also indicating the progress and also the issue of the sites and the yield that will actually come out of those sites. Within eThekwini, with the new sites that have been identified, we should be getting a yield of about 1,074 TRUs moving forward once the land agreements have been finalized and signed off accordingly. So for eThekwini short-term interventions, again, we are indicating the shelter, the ward, the land that has been identified, and its state of readiness and the ownership thereof. So that information is there, and we've got the plans in place, but the issue of the bulk services is now what is being finalized to ensure that this land is serviced accordingly. Moving to slide 69, we're indicating the challenges that we had on the 22nd of June, where we had a protest, a social lobby group called Umsinzi. Umsinzi came to the KZN Department of Public Works during a sitting of the provincial executive, and there was a demonstration. And in there, they raised the following issues: the issue around the certainty about the existent and the allocation of the 1 billion to KZN, the desperate living conditions in the halls, especially the Teus and Claremont, the issue of the theft of food and resources destined for the residents in shelter, and also the different quality of TRUs that were provided to a community in Shallcross in 2015, which is now different from what we have, and also the plight of women and children in halls as they are exposed to issues that are inappropriate. The members of the executive responded accordingly to the issues that were raised, and they also indicated the different stages, and also they provided proof that indeed an application was made, and the communities then dispersed peacefully. I also need to indicate in this particular slide that the Honorable MEC for Human Settlements is in a process of engaging the institutional housing providers to identify vacant flats that can then be used for moving people from the shelters. They've already identified 39 units in eThekwini and Umsunduzi, with the hope that they will then be able to move communities into these flats once all the engagements are done, because the social housing institutions are failing to have those occupied. So instead of leaving them idle, there is now a process underway through human settlements. Moving on to transport, I will not spend too much time on transport. This is the breakdown and also what they will be doing moving forward. A summary of the road closures and the temporary closures that are there to demonstrate that as a province we've documented everything, and we now await the release of funding for the implementation of the interventions. We also have short-term interventions that have been implemented in the following slides, where we are indicating a program on Valama potholes. In the next slide, we are indicating the Valama pothole short-term intervention. The pictures are indicating what is happening on the ground through the EPWP program. We also have a short-term intervention on road rehabilitation using the communities in the affected areas and also the resources within the affected areas. And these are the approaches to bridges that we are building in various areas. We also have the teams from Department of Transport, internal teams that are also assisting in terms of rehabilitating the roads where they have capacity is already underway. Short-term interventions, again, we've seen a shortage in terms of the operators for our
Chair.
yellow plant.
Chair, I'm so sorry to interrupt our sister who's doing an incredible job. I'm just concerned that you said you wanted to close the meeting at 4 and we still haven't heard from the ministerial responses. I'm just raising the flag.
Let's allow her to wind up.
Thank you.
DG?
Thank you. Just to move on, there is a split in terms of the Department of Transport, and there is the split for KZN DOT has got an agreement with Sanral, and we've got a clear indication of what Sanral will do and what KZN DOT will do. Sanral has indicated they are awaiting approval of the budgets, and they've not been able to then commence with the infrastructure that they've committed to assist with. KZN DOT has also agreements with some municipalities in terms of the maintenance, and that work will be ongoing as we move on. The DOT also signed an agreement with National Department of Public Works. They've gotten a 5-year MOA, and in there they will be doing the Bailey bridges. I think there was a question that was asked around the Bailey bridges, and there is an MOA that is in place, and they can add on new bridges as they come about. And for now, they've added a list of 23 bridges that have been submitted, and assessments were done by National Department of Public Works, and we then await implementation. Moving on, Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, I will not go through. Department of Education, I will also not go through, but to indicate and also to respond to the issue of the schools, the question around the schools that were badly damaged, I think it's category C, where work has not commenced because there is no funding. If we move, we've got mobile classrooms that have been provided to these schools. I think there are 26 of them in the slide. And out of those 26, there is about 9 that have not yet been supplied because there is no suitable land in that particular school. I think it's Brettonwood, yes, Brettonwood High School, where there is limited space, and the intervention has not yet yielded the intended results, and this is under Umlazi. Moving on to the bulk infrastructure, I will not go through these because the Honorable Deputy Minister in the morning went through the bulk services for Umgeni Water, but we are just indicating to show that, to demonstrate that there was no water coming into the system after the aqueducts were washed away. So that work has commenced in terms of the slide where we're indicating the Umgeni Water has commenced with most of the work. Some is at procurement stage, while in others the contractors are on site, as reported earlier on by the Deputy Minister. The aqueduct, special aqueduct 1 and 2, the contractor moved on site, and we are then hoping that by next year, the system should be back into full production. I will also not go through the water status update, but to indicate we've got a documented indication per water treatment works, per wastewater treatment works in terms of its status and what needs to be done, and also the challenges that we are facing. And in most cases, is the wash away of the pipes, is the pump stations that were demolished, which then results in water not flowing to communities, in sewer not being taken to the treatment works. We have the schedule of water shedding, and that has also started to yield a bit of positive results, because some people are now getting water that did not get water So the rationing is assisting moving forward. Moving on again to the issue of the river water quality, I did indicate there are challenges in eThekwini, and eThekwini cannot move forward because some of these assets are insured. So it means we are going to be sitting with sewer flowing into rivers and beaches for quite some time until the issue of insurance is resolved. And this is the quality that is indicated in the following slides, where we are indicating almost all the rivers within eThekwini being in red. Almost all the rivers are indicated. We are also indicating that most of the treatment works, the pump stations, are also affected, and therefore no sewer is being pumped out. So there are those challenges. We've got the list in place. I will not go through it, but members can then read at leisure. You'd see that there are a lot of reds in the pump stations, a lot of reds in the treatment works, and also there are sites where there is no electricity, meaning even though the pump station is not affected, because there is no electricity in the area, they cannot pump. So there is that correlation between water, electricity, and sanitation, and we need to address all those three together so that we meet our obligations. Moving on, Ilembe have got serious challenges. Ugu, we've got a list again of their challenges in per site and the pump station.
We have one of the municipalities, Mr. Shlomoga led all the municipalities and the premier. They've done the presentation. If you can go to the challenges.
Okay, the cost of floods on slide 131, we're indicating the cost of floods in KZN. We're not just looking at the cost in terms of the economy, it's the cost in terms of the destruction in residential, the cost in terms of the port, the destruction in network connectivity, and so forth. So these costs have then been translated into the economic recovery plan, and in that plan we are indicating what needs to be done for each, and this is being led and championed through ETIA. And again, the Bayhead, the South Basin, we are not going to go through in detail, except to indicate that there are pillars of response for each one of them. And we've also received support from National DTI, where they've provided funding. The communication work stream has also indicated their support, and we are not going to go through in detail. Moving on to the finance. Moving on to finance, just to indicate the funding request is 17 billion, which is indicated, and this was submitted on the 9th and the 17th of May for immediate and long-term relief. And out of that, we are outlining what has been approved. And 173 slide, we are indicating the reprioritization by the province, the reprioritization by municipalities, and and what has since been approved on the 22nd of June, and that letter of allocation has been sent through for the 87 million. The challenged municipalities are on 174, where we had issues in terms of the insurance, in terms of non-clarity of the application, and this has since been cleared, and 123 million of the funding application should be ready for processing, and 139 also should be ready for processing, as we have dealt with the challenges that we faced. The main challenge now becomes the issue of insurance, which is on slide 175, where we've got eThekwini and Uthugela, which are still outstanding because of the challenges with the insurance. Not recommended is 34 million, and out of that is Ilembe, Ugu, and Uthugela, and those that were requiring further verification, it's only 34 million. So we have received the allocation letters, and the issue that remains is that of the insurance, and eThekwini has put in a motivation requesting for a bridge financing and reimbursement when funding is released. The last slide, we are then recommending the issue around the insurance, and we are also indicating the concerns around the opportunists in the shelters and the politicization of the issue of the provision of housing, which is now underway in the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, TDG. You are fine. Let me allow my colleague to deal with the responses.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for KZN for that very detailed presentation. It shows that you indeed have done your homework when it comes to the various sectors, and it will empower us as we further interact with that presentation that is there. I now want to go back to the different departments through the deputy ministers to respond to the matters that have been raised just before lunch time in this meeting. I will start with the COCTA, and then thereafter we'll have human settlements, public works, and water and sanitation. Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I will start in the interest of time. My colleague was already in, but nonetheless, if there are areas maybe I wouldn't cover, we'll get to deal with them. Chair, the issue of how many municipalities and how much assistance did we give, I suggest that National Treasury ourselves create that matrix, and it gives full detail, rather than me going through what MISA has done to submit to National Treasury. It doesn't give you an answer of who delayed and how many days did it take for the department to assist a municipality to compile an assessment and submit to National Treasury for funding. But to give comfort to the committee, the information is here. We assisted about 8 municipalities in relation to the floods only, with regard to the compilation of the rapid assessments, with regard to the floods. And it goes into 8 areas, that is your roads, stormwater, solid waste, water and sanitation, and prioritization, and the estimation of what we think it will cost to assist the municipality to be able to claim, or rather to put the information forward to National Treasury with regard to their applications. I must also do indicate, Chair, that there were applications which were submitted by municipalities and were found to be short in some of other areas, and the department assisted for final submission. So we'll verify on the metrics as to whether is it the beginning of the process of the value chain which delays the application, or it's after submission to National Treasury. I think National Treasury responded with regard to one application which has been rejected in as far as what they've received. There is lack of capacity in municipalities, but it doesn't end there for us. Besides the assessment, also MISA assisted with regard to infrastructure development on a temporary basis to assist municipalities in one way or the other, so that they could, particularly on roads, so that the roads are rideable within the time frame, in the short space of time, so that they are able also to apply and follow the processes for the long term. Hence, and did categorize 3 stages. So the interim reporting with regard to what the department coordinates, it's I think KZN also has showed it now in some of their slides. It starts at the municipal provincial level together with COCTA, and we get supplementary reports which we coordinate for the full report at the National Disaster Management Center, where all the reports are consolidated. Honorable Mkalipi, yes, there may be changes or differences in one area or other, because the reports are germinated from the user department themselves and submitted to COCTA. And they are not standing reports, they are developmental reports, because work keep on happening on a day-to-day basis. Usually in provinces, they meet in a weekly basis, and at the NTMC, they meet on a second-week basis or on the basis of the agent. So the turnaround time of the application and the information sometimes lapse, but I did get the point of us going to verify the issue and the numbers of the land, and I think I appreciate that. I went to check our slide and check the slide of Department of Public Works. There are discrepancies there, I admit, and we should be able to deal with that. With the issue of spending, with regard to provinces, municipalities. Provinces in the main have been assisting municipalities as well in terms of the rollout of their spending on the legal that has been approved or has been able to get into their table. I'm not sure, Chair, if I have left any questions. Okay, there was one last question which says there are 6 municipalities which were mentioned, but only 2 were mentioned with regard to what was assisted. I'm not sure whether it was in relation to MISA, but the report could be circulated on regard to the 7 that MISA assisted with regard to their application processes. Thank you, Chair. I think that's what I heard from honorable members.
Deputy Minister Pamela Chwete.
Good afternoon, co-chairs. Thank you very much. Chair, let me start by explaining the TRUs, because most of questions were around the TRUs. The quantum for TRUs is 78,000. And that 78,000, Chair, it includes electrifying that TRU. Of course, we have problems with ESCOM at the moment. You might find that some of the TRUs have no electricity because of problems of ESCOM. And again, TRUs, colleagues, we don't encourage provinces to build TRUs, but there are dire situations where there is no shelter and nothing for people. We always say the TRU is not permanent. TRU is temporary. And we have a policy that deals with TRUs. Provinces, they know. It shouldn't be more than a year. We always encourage them if there is a need, because there's one thing we always say as national. If a person waited for 2 years, there is no need for you to give that person a TRU.
Deputy Minister, there's a lot of private discussions happening. I'll request those who want to engage in matters that's more important than what you are doing to go outside and to do it there. You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I was saying then, we always encourage the provinces to build permanent houses immediately, because it's not for more than a year, TRUs. Again, Chair, let me put the record straight. South Africa is building houses for destitutes, Chair, in a normal situation. So even if there is a disaster, we will do assessment. It's not automatic that we are going to build houses, because I know I've been to places where there was fire. You'll find that 18-year-old is having a shock, and that 18-year-old is expecting me to build a house for her. I don't do that, because we only build houses for child-headed households. That's point number 1. It's a policy. Yes. Child-headed households, what does it mean? If your mother died when you were, that mother was in the list. So we will then build a house for those children. But ordinarily, I can't build a house for a child. We are always encouraged to apply for NSFAS for children to go to school so that they can build houses for themselves. 2, even if it means there is a disaster, we will always encourage people to do assessment so that we build houses for the right people. Because the same department or same portfolio committee will come to me and say, there are elderly people that are in the list that do not have houses. So we prioritize. We make sure that even if there's a list of departments, we prioritize persons with disability, we prioritize headed households, we prioritize elderly people. Coming back to the issue of CIBD, I think that one is more technical. I will give it to DDG to deal with it. And I know, Chair, the issue of most provinces have tried, and also I think DG has covered most of the questions that were asked in your presentation concerning human settlements. I think those are the issues to my paper that I've written that were asked by, most of them that were asked by honorable members. If I leave out any questions, Chair, I think DDG will help me because some of them were more technical, but I'm trying to stick on policy of government so that we don't impress people to say we build houses for everyone. We don't have that money. But the last thing that I must say, honorable members, is that we always allocate, because there was a question around reprioritization, we always allocate money every financial year to provinces. In the case of disaster, we say reprioritize. The reason we're saying that is because we don't want them to wait for money from us. They must deal with the problem immediately and then apply after. And what does it mean? It means we do reinvest, because once you use money and you reprioritize, we will then say to you, then after you will then apply, then we give you that money. So the question of reprioritization, it's not true that we don't give the money back. The only worry that always deal with us is when provinces are given money and don't utilize that money. There are cases of provinces that are given money and don't utilize that money. To avoid that, we came up with a strategy. In the MINMEC, they know that if you don't use the money, we take money to provinces that are in need of money. I think I will ask the DDG to speak on CIBD because it's technical, and some questions that maybe I might have left out to assist me that are technical. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. The DDG. Give a mic to the DDG, please. No, we can't hear you. Where's the technical staff?
Yes, I think it's now on. Let me first start by saying that the standards for the temporary residential units, which in short they are called TRUs, they are in our National Housing Code of 2009. They are in detail about the walls, the foundation, the doors, the roofs, everything about the building of a house. There are standards. And as well as even the steelwork, there are standards based on South African national building standards. All of those standards, I think the document is available on our website. Also, as a home builder, the people that are building TRUs, they have to be ensured that they have competency in building homes. And that's why then we also require them to register with the NHBRC as well as have the CIDB certificate. So it's not only the CIDB, but as well as the NHBRC certificate. When it comes to the number of, because there was a question around the number of TRUs that were requested to be in KZN, 4,983. Yes, the colleagues in KZN indicated the districts where those will be built. That's not our responsibility to indicate the districts. That's their responsibility. They indicated to us the ballpark figure, but in terms of our oversight role, we do ensure then that we know exactly where those will be built. And they also indicated that the funding that we provided them is not new funding, is because this was the financial year, a new financial year, we have indicated to them they should utilize the funding that is already available to them not any additional funding that they got. I'm sure you have that. Also, the issues around, I think the slowness. Remember that one of the things that needs to happen is once you identify a piece of land, you have to do pre-feasibility studies as well as the pre-planning studies that are required. And there are legislation that we need to follow that is outlined in terms of Special Planning and Land Use Management Act, which of course we have requested then that we get a little bit of a leeway with regard to that legislation, but we still have to follow that legislation. That is why then it takes a little bit longer, especially in the urban areas to develop the TRUs in all the provinces, as well as also the road infrastructure that we're struggling with in the Eastern Cape, and I'm sure you have had the issues around the Northwest. There was also the issues around the cultural adequacy of some of the products that we have. We acknowledge that we will ensure then that we'll deal with the cultural adequacy of some of the homes that we are providing. So the question was that what was the money based on? Yes, remember that it was based on a business plan that was approved before April. That was supposed to, and that business plan was supposed to be building houses. And what was required, it was an approved business plan. What was required then was to do a revised payment schedule, what then the business plan is revised. It was actually trying to expedite the issues around provision of this temporal shelter. Who is provided with this temporal shelter? The DM has already indicated. If you are completely homeless, it's a measure that we are providing so that at least you don't become completely homeless. There was also the issue around whether we are providing umkuku because we are a caring government. The TRU, as I say, is a temporal measure. It's not that then we are providing people with very low umkuku. However, we say that we can give you this so that you can have a home while we are providing later on a permanent solution. Then there was also the issues around the various interventions as a department that we have provided. Yes, the first one was funding. The second one, intervention, was the provision of temporary housing for those people that are completely rendered homeless by the floods, as well as also providing that implementation support. And we are also ensuring that then we exercise our oversight role and monitoring role. The issues around, I think I touched in most of the areas that were asked, and I hope because the major issues was about the slowness of the provision of TRUs, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The Honourable, the Deputy Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Honourable Chairpersons, Honourable colleagues from the Executive, Premiers present, MECs, and on the assessment, or the suitability rather, of the land parcels identified where people would where people have currently settled, and looking at how we avoid future disasters. Our identification of land is informed by the closeness or the proximity of the people that are to be resettled. But also it is informed by the fact that we give the land to HDA. It is because they must do the necessary geotechnical work. We do just the high level for identification, and they do the specifics. So it is their assessment that will determine whether it's suitable or not. The second point is from Honorable Broterseth on the quantification of damages to our buildings. And I would want to refer Honorable Broterseth to our presentation, slides 7, 8, 11, and 13. There's quite detailed information there on the costings. The next area is, the question is from, well, it was Honorable Mkalipi with the disjuncture, in as much as that question partly has been dealt with by my colleague from COCTA, but we also need to understand that we identify land parcels which will then be broken down to plots for people to resettle. And therefore the number may not necessarily be a direct correlation, but it will say, out of this land that we would have availed, so many plots would cover so many families. That's the part of the geotech work that is being done. Continuing with Honorable Kalipi, yes, when we were compiling this report, it was last week, and we were saying we're at 95% of us having finalized the work. Now, as we speak now, we are done. So it's 100%. The last question for us was from Honorable Mangu, who is responsible for the bridges. I think the presentation from the province has clearly outlined that we signed a service level agreement between ourselves, Department of Transport, in the affected province, the defense nationally, and it is the work of all of us that leads to the Bailey bridges. It's more of an intervention, much as bridges and roads are for transport, but these are rural interventions of the Bailey bridges. And therefore, we have a service level agreement that we have signed amongst ourselves so as to be able to foster that kind of intervention. So it's about collaboration, Chair, and coordination. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister Mashlobo.
Thanks, Chair, and all protocol observed. With respect to some of the issues that are being raised on water, we will probably not go in details because time is really way in this cartel. Firstly, to indicate that our attitude as a department is that we will no longer be more worried about water resources, but will also support on water services, even if it's a competence of the municipality. But our attitude is that municipalities must come to the party, and the provinces needs to come to the party in terms of really putting resources there to solve some of the problems. But at the very same time, we will not shy away from doing our responsibility when it comes to regulation, enforcement, and compliance. I will start with the issue raised by Honorable Comrade Mangu. We are already in the Eastern Cape, in all the areas that we have mentioned, working with the Premier and MEC Ngat. And we should be able to give you feedback on some of the areas because Port St. John was one of the areas that was identified that even national leadership were supposed to have gone there. Then on the last minute, it was postponed, but the provincial government continued with the work. But ourselves as a department working with the Provincial Disaster Management Center were there. We should be able, when you do your second round of interactions with us, to be there to give that report. With respect to Northwest, we do take also the advice. We're already there, we're advising them, but not only advising them, they demonstrated from a scientific point of view on how we understand water and how the problem should be solved. And the Premier were just conferring here before he left that he's very pleased with the advice we've given, not only the advice, but the real intervention we're making on the issues that are being raised. Honorable Mkhaliphi, yeah, Mapeng. Manje ngiyabona la uComrade uJomi Zwari uthi sengithathele kwi-EFF uMapeng wena yabo. The reality is that the assets are a responsibility of an owner of an asset, Mapeng. If the infrastructure is aging, it's the responsibility of those organizations to attend. We've done an assessment ourselves, and we've done an assessment working with MISA. One of the biggest mistakes we've made as the ANC government over the last 28 years, we've done well in terms of expanding access, but we've neglected the infrastructure that is existing over time. And it has caught up with us now. You know, for an example, if you make an issue of eThekwini, the infrastructure is gone. And it's gone, and it's not because of the floods. The floods have just exacerbated the problem. That's why, as part of supporting eThekwini, our DG deployed teams, COCTA deployed teams, we've done a thorough assessment of every infrastructure of eThekwini and what will it mean to replace that infrastructure. That's why, apart from the flood impact of about 2.2 billion, that includes all these other provinces. But if we look at the ability that this infrastructure must be replaced, thousands of kilometers of pipelines, but also be able to build in for growth in terms of population, but also growth in terms of the economies of those areas, the amount goes to 7.8 billion. We've done our work. But the reality now, we must answer the question, where will the money come from? We have also done the plans. The technical reports are there. The plans are there. That's why we're looking at Infrastructure SA, looking at DBSA, and the other mechanism of getting funding to be able to do these things. Fixing the infrastructure is the right thing to do. Why? You will ensure that it is an assurance of supply. Citizens will always be happy they are getting services. You will also be able to collect your revenue. Let's make an example of eThekwini. They buy water to us in terms of the water board, more than 300 million rands. But at the very same time, they can only bill about 50% of that because it goes underground. And then the citizens are angry, business can't invest, there are problems. When it comes to eThekwini, it's a special case. Our minister has made a decision. We'll engage with the Minister of COCTA, discussions are happening, and the Minister of Finance, including the Office of the Premier in KZN. eThekwini requires an intervention, like we're intervening in other metros. Our department has limitations in terms of the regime around funding, because the grant funding in our case, we can't fund them using RPIC or WISIC. They are funded using USDG. But we've reached a point that if we don't intervene as government, the situation will become worse and worse. You look at their wastewater treatment works, to have more than 350 million liters of sewer not arriving in the treatment plants and going into the rivers and the environment is a serious disaster environmentally, health-wise, and otherwise. We'll support eThekwini, but you as the committee will have to understand the magnitude of that problem, so that even as public representatives too, you play your part. You play your part because eThekwini remains one of the strategic cities of our land. But at the same time, as a department, we don't want to be chased around. We're going to start to enforce that they must fix the sewer problems, because someone is going to take us to court and say we are irresponsible. While we support you in terms of Section 154, also possibility of intervention with the other laws, But when it comes to pollution, we'll have zero tolerance irrespective who is involved. That is our attitude. Well, the other issues around what that person, Sbaru, gave you a wrong impression that Umgeni is a problem. We have demonstrated to you now, Umgeni, they are responsible for bulk. And when you look at their own system, there was a time when the system was cut down to nearly about 300 megaliters a day. The system has been stabilized. In terms of assurance of supply, we are actually more than 500 megaliters a day. But we know that the demand is about 800 megaliters. They must fix the infrastructure that is municipal related. It's the one that is not in good condition. In our case, that's why DG says, for the growth of eThekwini and the surrounding district, Umkomazi is going to come online. We're at a stage now with our own implementing agent, the TCTA, Umgeni, speaking with Treasury, we're packaging that so that at least we know that the development for the next 20 to 30 years, there's no problem there. We shouldn't be blamed for things that are not there. On the question of Umgeni, the Nahel Dam, very important because we received a lot of volumes there, like you have said, Honorable President. And one of the things that has happened now, that infrastructure, if you'll see, those two pipes, the Aquatat 1 and 2, the technology that was used is different. The other one is steel. And the other technology is concrete. And they are not the same. And when the damage was being made on those biggest pipelines, there was one pipeline that was actually destroyed in 6 parts. And if some of you have gone there as members of parliament, you will see around Molweni and that area of Kwangcolos, where a mountain just came down, it took everything, even the forest and so forth. Even the geotechnical assessment is no longer going to be the same to use the same engineering. We have directed through the minister that let them push and bring the other one online. They will be able to bring the other one in December, which is one of the better mechanisms that we could be able to do. The other one, we even have to actually import material just to be able to do some of that major work, because in total, you will remember that it gives us nearly 300 million liters per day. That's the massive work that needs to be done, very high level, technically, engineering, but remember the soil type of KwaZulu-Natal is no longer so, the integrity is no longer so strong. That's what that will happen. The bad news, another Aquatat 3 is leaking. And when it's leaking, those people who are staying around Chastwe, Umlas and others, from Tuesday, will have to put it offline so that we can be in a position to do scheduled maintenance. It's going to take 6 days. And when it takes 6 days, we'll lose more than 100 million liters per day of water. And we've told the eThekwini we need to be able to communicate. We must also be able to avoid issues of water hogging. But we know that because the contractor and the capability team that they have, from the 11th of July, we should be able to commission back, because we can't continue not to have it actually working. Currently, the other systems and the other pumps, they are actually being pushed in terms of reserve pumps, so that at least the system cannot be in a situation where it becomes more unreliable and unstable. That's what is happening when you deal with those issues of, especially eThekwini. The issues of unaccounted water, we have done an assessment, and the replacement of pipes must happen. Because what happens is that if you continue to lose, remember, if you lose 51%, it's a problem. Honorable Comrade Lesoma, we are trying to assist them. We've given them technical support. But that entity must be able to take responsibility. We must be able to know that if they fix those things, they will improve revenue collection. They should be able to start in areas where they know that people are paying this industry, so that by the time they end in the other side, they will end where other people could be able to be supported. But we're doing our part. There is no way then we're not going to charge them, because we have to charge them. because we're giving them water in terms of our pricing strategy. If bona they waste the water, is their problem, but we'll support them to fix it. But they will have to be able to provide leadership. Using water tankering, you lose a lot of money. And in the case at Tegwini, we're actually taking water from potable treated water from the system. We've opened too many points where they're able to fetch water, and we can guarantee that that quality is good. The water is tested on an ongoing basis. Where is the challenge? The challenge is where in certain areas like Hambanat and other areas we have put static tanks. People are starting to throw in foreign objects in those static tanks in communities. Therefore, the question of security, the question of quality could be affected. The question whether if the contracts, they come to an end on the 15th of July, the DG's advice will speak with those municipalities. They are coming to an end indeed, but we are not going to act irresponsible. All of us have a responsibility to say there is no disruption of a service. But our view, we want water to come from the taps. We don't want water to be coming from any other mechanism because it's inhumane. The issues of wastewater treatments, we've done a biggest assessment after many years where the department chose not to publish results of blue drop and green drop. And it's us who has actually published that results. It's not an independent organization or NGO. And municipalities have seen that their performance is not good, and that is going to be triggering them to start to improve. That's why we're saying that in terms of Tegwini, the sanitation issues, they are not actually even falling behind. They have not been attended to. And Tegwini doesn't have the money. And if it doesn't have the money, are we going to fold our arms and say it's okay? The answer is no. We will come in, we will support them, like I'm saying, the premier, the ministers that I've referred to. Tegwini needs our help, like we're helping in Gqeberha, we're helping in Tshwane, Johannesburg, everywhere. There is no exception. Let's help them because it's the right thing to do. I will stop there because, as I've said, Comrade Chair, there is no time. But for everything we've presented here, there is a timeline. There are resource requirements. There is a responsibility. We can be able to account to you from time to time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Deputy Minister.
Chair, is it parliamentary to say Sbari? If you could rule on that,
no,
please.
No, thank you. I won't rule on that matter. Thank you, Deputy Ministers. Thank you for your responses. I think you have provided us with quite a bit of information that the committee will now have to process, and we will be in touch with the various provinces so that we also cross-check information that is there. I don't want even to entertain the thought. During lunchtime outside, somebody whispered to me, and I said to the person, why don't you say it in the meeting, that some of these applications for funding from the provinces is stuck somewhere in a certain office. Now, I don't know which office that is, because I would have expected it to be said in the meeting, right? But we will pay specific attention as to the flow of applications and information from the province through the relevant departments, COCTA, to National Treasury, so that we can pinpoint exactly where the problem is. May I make use of the opportunity to thank the ministers in absentia who attended, as well as the deputy ministers for your hard day of work. Deputy Minister Chwete, I know we used to work very hard on a Friday. So that was when you were still a whip, right? Right, so I'm glad to see you continuing that tradition. Also to the Premier of KZN, thank you very much. We are there to support you in all your efforts, as well as the in absentia, the Premier of the Northwest, and the MEC Nita, who is representing the Premier of the Eastern Cape. We will continuously look at these matters. The committee will enter into a situation where we process the things that's in front of us To all the MECs from KZN, thank you for accompanying the Premier. And it was valuable to get insight also outside of this meeting on some of the issues that are there, and the MEC Mika from the Northwest. Where there is certain information, honorable members, where you ask questions where the information may be at variance or there's a difference, then we will look into those matters. That's why we are accompanied by a team of researchers and also content advisors so that we can follow up on those issues. The Deputy Minister Chwete mentioned exactly the 78,000 rand that is there for TRU. So if there's information coming from certain provinces that's contrary to that, it's a matter that we definitely will look into. The officials that have accompanied the delegations that are here, thank you very much for your presence today. It is highly valued, and I can assure you that we will interact again in the foreseeable future. I can also give the undertaking to the provinces that are here that we will come back to those provinces because we physically want to see the improvements that are taking place. But even between meetings, if there are issues that arise, whether it is at a political level or elsewhere, please feel free to contact us. Me or the co-chairperson, we are available so that we can interact with our colleagues in the executive to unblock some of these things. I usually say, let's not wait for a formal meeting before we table the issues. There's a lot that can be done offline so that we do the necessary work to improve the conditions of our people. I now hand over to the Honorable Nyambu, who will close the meeting.
Colleagues, there's nothing more to say except that the ad hoc committee, you'll remember that when we were planning this meeting, we decided to cut some of the ministers because we were mindful of the time, and we said it's impossible to have a lot of them in one room. There were supposed to be 16 in one day, and we said it's impossible. So we've learned our lessons today. But with that, without spoiling the good work that has been done, let me officially declare this one closed. It's a Friday today. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
to,
Okay, this one works. Can they hear me from this mic? Are they there? Yes. 1, 2. They can hear me from this one, yeah? And this mic? Okay, that's fine. I just need to like step out of here. Can you key it out? Give me this. And then? Huh? It brings it. Yes, done. Yeah, no? Done. Is that cool? That's it. Okay, sure. I don't want to fix it, but I need to fix it. Yeah, it's been a long day. Right, it's been a long day. It's been a long one. But at least it's still intact. Okay. Okay, we're about to start now. Do you want to test his audio? Are you waiting for me? They must press record. Are they recording? Can we go?
Okay, we are waiting. Please, we have a minute. Eskom is going to switch off.
Yeah, that's okay, yeah? What's going on?
Are you ready? Can you get the mic? Can you get this mic?
You're going to press it here. You don't have to. Just put it here. Bit up. Yeah, it's fine. And this one, can they hear this one? Okay.
3, 2, 1. I can't hear it. 3, 2, 1. Can't hear it. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Three, two, one.
Two, 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2.
1, 2.
Okay. No, you don't need to hear the other person. Yes, okay.
3, 2, 1.
So, Chair, you're just going to like introduce yourself, and you don't need to be elaborate about what has happened in the past, and you just need to speak briefly about what led to this meeting and how the meeting went. Sorry, guys, can you just be quiet for a while? So, like, yeah, that's just that. I just want a reflection of your how the meeting went, and yeah, and basically what would be next going forward. So on 3, 2, 1, introduce
3,
yourself.
2, 1.
Yeah, you're on. You speak to me.
3, 2, 1.
You must be able to hear the mic.
3, 2, 1.
Can you just cut me like this? Just can you do this? Let's give it close up, yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, perfect. That's cool. So check. Can you cut? Yeah. 3, 2, 1.
My name is Jomonyambi, co-chair ad hoc joint committee flood disaster relief and recovery. Today we happen to have a meeting with all the relevant stakeholders after we've visited all the affected provinces. We started in KZN, we went to Eastern Cape, this week we're in Northwest. So after the engagement with the Minister of Finance, we picked it up that there's a challenge in terms of coordination. So we thought that it was going to be in order to organize a meeting of today's nature where all the relevant stakeholders will be in one room so that we can unlock the blockages and assist the dire situation on the ground. So today's purpose was to have all the affected provinces being represented by premiers and MSCs and the national departments, your finance, water and sanitation, human settlement in one roof. So that is why we decided to have them today.
So if you can briefly just reflect on how the meeting went today, and what is your general impression?
Today's meeting went very well. It was more than our expectations. Of course, we started with the acting Minister of Finance that presented the situation, what they have done up to this far. And with the engagement, giving the opportunity to the affected provinces, responding to what was presented by acting Minister of Finance and the members engaging the presentation. One thing that came out very clear and the minister considered, it's poor coordination. So the sooner we have the metrics that will guide us moving forward in terms of how government is responding at all levels, because they are working in silos. There are some pockets of excellence, but the manner in which they are being coordinated is still a challenge. So we felt that it's going to assist us. After the response from the presentation, when the minister was asked some critical questions and he considered to the issue of coordination, and after that is then that we allowed water and sanitation, Cooperative, public works, human settlement, and they've done their presentation. And from there we also did the same. We allowed the affected municipalities to do their own presentation in terms of the current situation, current challenges, and responding to questions that were raised by members in relation to what is happening in different provinces, municipalities, so that we can be able to have a better understanding, because we want to have a preliminary report that will guide us so that we can be able to assist the blockages that we have seen and the dire situation in different municipalities.
Now, Mr. Nyambi, what led to this meeting was the constant or the recurring theme on the issue that relates to the 1 billion and the unlocking of funds that needed to go to the various provinces. After having gone through this meeting, did you get any responses from that?
Yes, the issue of 1 billion today was clarified. I think it was put to rest that the money is available, but the challenge is the process of the application. So the unfortunate statement that was made in the past that we have got provinces and municipalities that are struggling to submit some forms is not a proper reflection of the true situation of what happened in the past. The issue is Treasury receiving the applications from the necessary departments that are dealing with the coordination. That is why I started by outlining the issue of coordination. That is still a critical challenge. But to date, not all the money has been given to all the affected provinces, but they have spent up to 300 million over and above the reprioritization. So it's a clear indication that the communication and the proper coordination that we spoke about and the metrics that will be given to us by the Minister of Monitoring and Evaluation in the Office of the President will go a long way to assist in dealing with this challenge when it comes to coordination, because we can't allow a situation where different departments and municipalities are working in silos as if it's a federal arrangement of the country, yet we know that we are in a unitary state.
Yeah, just change a bit. Okay, so, the concluding question that I want to put to you, now that you... Okay, so, the concluding question, now that you have, completed, your oversight mission over the 3 provinces, and have had this meeting, and we also know that the mandate of the committee expires sometime in November, what is the next step forward, for the committee?
The first thing that we'll do is to have a meeting of the committee that will come with a preliminary report, and from there we'll be getting back to all the provinces to get progress report so that that can assist, because we're still stuck with the issue of oversight and want to make sure that what is being presented here in terms of progress from the last visit and the time that will be going to them and the commitment that has been made by the necessary departments and what they have said they have achieved in terms of their performance as different municipalities and provinces. So we still have to go back to them so that we can make an assessment, so that once we conclude and we come with a final report, we'll have some lessons learned and we'll have something as a point of reference in terms of experience and how we have to deal with the magnitude of disasters as a country. And one thing that we're learning and what that came out very clear today is that if we're going to be able to improve when it comes to coordination, it can go a long way to avoid some of the blockages that we have picked. And of course, even the issue of 1 billion created a lot of problems. That is why there were a lot of questions around it. The issue of what is being done by different national departments, the communication, and how the pockets of excellence that are happening in different provinces and the manner in which they are being coordinated, the provinces, it's an issue that probably when it comes to intergovernmental relations, the IGR, we have to have a way of looking at it so that we make sure that we improve. And we are going to invite the AG, Auditor General, because there are monies that have been allocated besides the portion of the 1 billion and the reprioritization, and of course some donors, so that they can be able to account for those monies spent. But the AG has got a template that is guiding and is going to give us a sense of the situation in different provinces, so that we can't wait till to the end. It's then that we can get in and start doing oversight and asking the critical questions. As we move along, we have to make it a point that we are part of being able to do our oversight as per the constitution and the mandate of this committee.
Thank you so much, sir. can stop the recording and export an MP3 for me